Well, welcome to a Plan B Passport webinar. Really appreciate you all joining us today. And this month, we actually wanted to cover a couple of topics that we've never touched on before. And those topics are Jessica, help me out.
I got you. I got it. Here.
Yeah, so the things we're going to be talking about today: market analysis, kind of sharing with you our vision, like what we see is going on. After that, we're gonna dive into the flag theory toolbox, what's on the table, what you can utilize to achieve more freedom or to achieve your own goals, as well as we'll talk about current trends and popular spots. Again, we are pretty niche in the industry, right? So we're working with a very specific audience. So we're gonna be sharing the trends that are touched by Bitcoiners. So where Bitcoiners go, what they're interested in, etc. After that, of course, we'll dive into the programs we work with, how it works, what to expect, etc. And just, talk about what your next steps might be. Let's go into that. All right, the first thing that we wanted to touch on: predictions. As we gain expertise, we work in the industry, we make more connection in different countries, we see, like, we're going through experiences with all of our clients, we start to form our own opinion on what is about to happen in the world of financial migration or investment migration. And when I say investment migration, it's kind of like all the immigration programs that involve things like donation or investment, right? So it kind of excludes things like from other immigration processes, such as political asylum, student visas, employment-based immigration. So we don't touch those. And that's why we call it investment migration. So predictions, the trends that we're seeing right now, and I really hope it's not my wishful thinking and not the hopium in my head, but the way I receive it is the EU and some other previously powerful nations and jurisdictions are losing their strength, right? We've seen Brexit happening, which really, touched the EU and the strength. And we also see insane inflation hitting Europe, hitting all over the world. But unlike Latin America or East European countries or some other jurisdictions, EU are not used to this kind of environment whatsoever. So we see them struggle with their economy. Therefore, their power is being threatened. And if those were true capitalistic structures, they would try to be more attractive to their customer and gain power by just being the strong competitor of the industry or of the market. But we're talking about governments here. And, they have monopoly and violence as their main feature. And the most common behavior that they use in order to achieve whatever they want is manipulation, right? So what we see happening is the EU and its strongest players are trying to manipulate other less powerful nations so they stop basically taking the market cut from them. So just to give you a couple examples, for a while we anticipated that Portugal would start to become more strict with the conditions they offer to the new incumbent residents. And now we do see rumors of the potential changes in the tax regime when it comes down to crypto. Montenegro is shutting down the doors on their citizenship by investment program as well. And again, what's happening with Montenegro is they've been trying to get into EU for years. And they've been trying to do everything they can in order to get the blue check mark and become a part of the EU.
We're obedient, don't worry.
Yeah, basically. And, they're just getting with the game in order to achieve what they need to achieve, which, like, I understand where they're coming from, but like, that's what we noticed. And again, not to get lost in the details here, what we can potentially see in the short to midterm, and short to midterm, I say something like 2 to 5 years, we can potentially see more citizenship by investment and residency programs being closed due to the pressure from more powerful nations. Of course, we already see it happen before, right? So Cyprus shut down their program. It used to be extremely, extremely popular program. So it happened before. And even those who can withstand the pressure, they might just start getting their due diligence more strict, raising the price, and kind of like trying to still keep up with the EU game and other powerful nations game while still having those investments coming in. In regard to a longer time frame, though, and again, this is where my wishful thinking and hopium kicks in, as well as the sovereign individual thesis kicks in. New jurisdictions that don't have access to strong military, that don't have access to money printer machine or natural resources, that were previously reliant on friendship with their stronger brothers, will now have to rely on their ability to win over the competition for your money and the fruits of your labor, right? Like, this is a true capitalism, kind of like true free market evolves in the nation's game. So this is where we hope to see the actual free market evolved. All CIPs will be coming back into play, hopefully. The new CIPs, Citizenship by Investment programs, will be popping up. And not just CIPs, but also other immigration programs, such as, skill-based, expertise-based, or entrepreneurship-based. Again, they're trying to win you over. They compete for your money, fruits for your labor, just like a normal free market, Another big prediction that we want to talk about is price. Now, while we see high inflation in everything, basically like from toilet paper to housing market, of course, we have not seen Citizenship by Investment programs announce the raise on their price. Most of the Citizenship by Investment programs, let me clarify. So basically, I hope that the price will stay the same for 2023. However, I cannot promise that. If I were personally a Citizenship by Investment director, I would probably kick it up probably like 25% by now, and the market would respond just fine, honestly. But if they keep the price as it is now, the Citizenship by Investment program becoming even more affordable, because we see the
purchasing power.
Yeah, the purchasing power of the dollar keeps going down, so like the price will seem to be smaller. And usually, based on my experience, Citizenship by Investment programs that we work with in the Caribbean, they do like to announce any of their changes few months in advance, unlike Turkey. Actually, it was pretty funny when Turkey realized that they're getting a lot of interest. In a matter of a week, they said, okay, it used to be 250, now it's gonna be 400. No heads up, no announcement, like
the
nothing.
Demand was just so high.
The demand was really high for Turkey, and still is. Again, the reason it is so high because of the East European conflict right now. Again, this is our predictions. We by no means saying that we've got the special ball, whatever the
crystal ball.
The crystal ball. Again, it's a
unfortunately.
Yeah, is that like take it with a grain of salt. So this is where we currently stand, and now let's see what tools you have on the table and what makes sense for you. Sorry, let me take a little drink. Starting to lose my voice.
Wet your whistle a little.
Yeah. All right. A little step back here to Sovereignty 101. Well, building your strategy for anything when it comes down to sovereignty, to prepping, you usually follow the current steps, right? Again, that's something that you think about when preparing your ammunition and guns, when trying to secure your house, when trying to think about your health, etc., etc.
And if you went to the underground citadel, you would have gotten a really nice insight in all these different things.
The next one's coming in August.
Yeah.
I love our events. Yeah. All right, so Sovereignty 101. When it comes down to building strategy, these are the steps that you always take. Understand attack vectors, calculate risk, consider budget, and then execute. So when it comes down to flag theory, by the way, at flag theory, at Plan B Passport, the way we define flag theory is a concept of limiting your dependency on any one particular state by stacking flags from jurisdictions that are beneficial for you in various ways. So again, we are reducing the dependency on one country you're mostly reliant on right now, and looking for the jurisdiction that makes sense for your business, your desired lifestyle, appealing tax regime, regulatory environment, etc. Right? So the flag theory toolbox. Again, depending on your attack vectors, you might be trying to achieve different goals. Is it safety and security for your family and your loved ones, which is definitely the biggest one usually? Is it the way to reduce your tax obligation? Another huge one. Is it an asset protection mechanism, etc.? So the instruments that we have in our toolbox are citizenship, residency, banking, legal entity, bug out home, or real estate, right? So like these are the 5 that we usually talk about. Citizenship being the ultimate plan B route, and residency, usually much easier to obtain, much cheaper, most likely, but not as easy to keep in some cases, because it just comes with certain requirements, such as, spend 180 days in the country and things like that. And another reason that I'm way more inclined towards citizenship is, as opposed to residency, is while residency allows you to live and work in the country and enter the country at any point, it will not allow you to cross borders. Like, it's not a travel document. So when we say Plan B passport, we mean that in the scenario where your country doesn't like you anymore, in a scenario when your country becomes a world aggressor and your passport is a horse shit.
One way of putting.
Yeah. That's actually from The Big Short.
Yes.
He says horse
Yes.
shit all the time. So that's why I always say that like the ultimate plan B is passport, while residency is also pretty good to have in certain scenarios. Banking. So with banking, let's say, again, pretty good example was East European conflict. Russian citizens are no longer allowed to take a part in any of the SWIFT transactions. They just got logged out of it. They cannot use, I see people raising hands. We're going to be able to answer a question a little later. So they are no longer allowed to use any of those transactions rails. If only we had an asset that is borderless and censorship resistant, yeah. But yeah, basically their banking got shut down, and it's really hard for those citizens of Russia who live outside of the world, who had international businesses, etc. So with banking as an instrument in your toolbox, you would still be able to be a part of the world economy if you just had a banking outside of your country. Another instrument in the toolbox is legal entity, right? So based on goals such as like corporate tax in your country is pretty high and you don't want to play in that. So you find a better jurisdiction for that, or a regulatory environment, like your country prohibits certain businesses, certain industries, etc. Another thing is that I notice is it's really hard to hire people outside of the United States if you're an American company, or it's also pretty hard to hire Americans if you are a European company. So like for this scenarios, people sometimes also open additional entities. And the next one in the toolbox is bug out home or real estate. For example, it can be a ranch in Latin America, or in case shit hits the fan, you got a range. Or it can also be a place that will most likely avoid any political instabilities and will allow your family to just keep the lifestyle that you guys are used to. Bug out home is actually often incorporated into citizenship and residency instrument, as those can be obtained via real estate investment. So we'll touch on it later a little bit more, but this just to give you an example. Let's say an attack vector where you consider high probability is the US going into the times of serious civil aggression, just an example. And you don't want to be part of it. So what do? You get on a sailboat and you sail down to Antigua, where you are a citizen already because you obtain a passport. And by the way, you obtain it by buying a 2-3 bedroom, fully furnished villa for like $400,000, right? So you kind of got two at one. You know how we say it, two rabbits with one shot. You guys also
Two
have
birds with one stone.
Yeah, we say two rabbits with one shot. So now I also wanted to go over the current trends, right? The top popular destination that we're seeing. And again, one thing to mention that Plan B audience is very specific. The things that our clients value are not necessarily the same as other industry players see with their audience. We are Bitcoiners. We believe in personal responsibility, free market, non-aggression principles, low time preference, and like we attract the same audience basically. And Bitcoiners' needs are pretty specific. So I'm talking about my experience. It may not match what other industry players see. As for citizenship, Caribbeans are definitely still a top choice throughout the industry. And for multiple reasons. It's pure capitalism, citizenship by investment. Like you either donate or buy real estate. Like it's a transaction, right? You pay, you receive, like value for value. So with Plan B Passport, we see St. Lucia is definitely top one for single applicants, as well as for those who want to get it done fast. Pretty streamlined process with St. Lucia. Antigua and St. Kitts are very popular for bigger families, and those are pretty strong jurisdictions in the Caribbean. Their program's been running for decades. Can never say that word. The next one is residencies, right? What we see in the Bitcoin community for residencies being attractive. Costa Rica, you probably see it. Mexico, huge one. And Portugal Golden Visa. Portugal used to be more shitcoinery, but kind of trying to become more legit. But at the same time, they did announce that they will start taxing quote unquote crypto. So we are yet to see how it's going to work out for those who already obtained the golden visa and who are still thinking about it. Portugal, though, is a pretty cool place for those who are trying to keep their lifestyle. It's like pretty modern lifestyle. You can get whatever you want. You also live on on the ocean, pretty nice weather, etc. Mexico, like we do provide Portugal golden visa program for our non-European clients, and Mexico is something that we're currently working on. It's the value of Mexico is a little different from our other jurisdictions, but still pretty good jurisdiction to have in your toolbox. Banking. What we see in banking is the popular ones are Singapore, Portugal, Estonia seems to be desired as solely banking locations. However, our clients also definitely get their bank accounts set up in the Caribbean after they obtain the citizenship and find it pretty useful. Legal entities, definitely Singapore again, Dubai, huge, and Caribbeans, again, because corporate tax and regulatory environment. For bug out homes, range in Latin America, range in Texas, or something like more of a luxury lifestyle would be a villa in the Caribbeans. So let's dive into programs. Jessica, you take from there.
I'll take it away. So basically, when it comes to Plan B Passport, the first thing we do before signing any contract is we'll get on a call or an email thread. And basically what happens is we'll brainstorm together on what would the best jurisdiction that best fulfills your wants and needs for you and your family. And we used to work with 30 jurisdictions, but as of now, we focus on the 5 Caribbean islands, as well as Portugal that Katie mentioned. And as she also mentioned, that we're currently preparing programs for Mexico and US immigration, just because we've been getting a lot of interest regarding those. And the reason why we downsized the number of jurisdictions we work with is because of our own audience's interests, as well as our personal philosophical alignments with the countries that we advertise to our clients. And the way the process works is we'll go through the deciding factors between one jurisdiction and another, and those include timeline, price, the amount of applicants, and as well as the passport that you currently hold, because that's really important. Some of the jurisdictions you work with, they offer more powerful passports than others. And once that's been decided, we also need to decide which route you want to take. So do you want to go the donation route or the real estate route? And there are pros and cons for both. So for example, the pros for donation are it's just easier. And in terms of opportunity cost, you only have to give up around 130 to 150,000, depending on how many applicants at the moment, versus freezing around 300,000 in real estate for around 5 to 7 years, depending on the jurisdiction. And for those whose investment portfolio consists of 99% of Bitcoin, which is typically a lot of our audience, they don't really consider buying real estate because it's not really in their picture. However, for those who are considering spending a lot of time in the Caribbean, want to set up residency there, just want to have a second place to escape to, have a bug out home outside of the mainland, for those who are really used to investing in real estate, this is typically an attractive option for them, and they, like to go the real estate route. Also, the properties can be turned into a cash flow opportunity, since most of the properties we work with are commercial. So for example, you can purchase shares of a hotel who pay you dividends, or you can also get very suitable short-term properties that can be rent out, and a lot of them have management companies, so they'll take care of it for you, and you'll get monthly payouts, which is pretty attractive for some people. So let's go ahead and look into particular cases. So for example, our most popular route is the donation route for St. Lucia. And honestly, we don't really recommend anyone move forward with the real estate route for St. Lucia, just because they have such a small selection of real estate to choose from. And those typically aren't really attractive, simply because they're still under construction, and the construction just quite honestly keeps getting delayed, and we don't necessarily trust the developers. So if someone wants to go through with St. Lucia, we typically tend to recommend the donation route. And just because also their due diligence process is really fast, they'll get it done within 90 to 120 days. So if you're someone who needs a passport quickly, then we typically recommend donation for St. Lucia. For the real estate route, our most popular are either Antigua, if you're looking for private villas. We work with a developer who's offering 2 to 3 bedroom villas that are really beautiful, or St. Kitts, if you're looking to purchase hotel shares. And we're going to go ahead and look into both of them specifically. So in St. Kitts, they have the Park Hyatt, where you purchase shares of the hotel, and the price of shares is $220,000. And you do get some dividends because the hotel is fully operational, and you can see some pictures here. It's a really beautiful hotel. It's 5 stars, located within Banana Bay. They've been listed as one of the finest hotels in the Caribbean for the past 5 years. And Katie actually personally stayed there, and you'll be able to see some videos on our YouTube channel about that. And it's just quite a really solid option for a single applicant. The total cost, which includes due diligence, the actual purchase of the real estate shares, as well as our professional fees, is $260,500. And if you're a family of 4, it's around $310,000. And basically, it's just a really solid option if you're looking for a place to escape to a couple weeks out of the year, and while also receiving a passport. And then you also have Antigua, and these are the 2 to 3 bedroom villas that I was describing earlier. And basically, these are built for you. You pick the plot, and you pick which floor plan you want, and they'll be delivered to you within 8 to 15 months. It's a pretty good location site. You'll get sole ownership, so it's you that just owns the land and the house. The house comes fully furnished, and they can manage it for you, rent it out, take care of all of the rental management, everything that goes on, and you can visit it whenever you like. So for a single applicant, it would be around $450,000. Again, includes due diligence, purchase of the real estate, as well as our professional fees. Or for a family of 4, it's around $463,000. And then, so I want to go into a little bit of how the process works. And since it's a considerably big sum of money, and obviously people don't want to commit until you know for certain that you'll receive the passport. So I'll start from the beginning. Once you start working with Plan B Passport, we understand your needs and goals. We pick the jurisdiction that's ideal for you, and we'll send you an agreement, and then we'll start to put together your application. So basically, we'll start off the paperwork process by having an onboarding call with your client manager, yourself, and our lawyer. And this call is basically just to understand what kind of paperwork you'll have to gather. And we'll customize the checklist for you specifically and basically work out any potential roadblocks that we might encounter along the way. And after that, you start collecting the paperwork on your side while we're preparing all of your government forms on our side and putting together your application to submit to the island. And the paperwork process usually takes around 15 to 45 days. And this is truly dependent on how quickly you can gather your documents. Some people have all of them at hand and they're able to just grab them within a couple of days. And it also depends on which jurisdiction you decide to proceed with. So for example, St. Kitts requires apostille and notarization for basically all the documents, whereas St. Lucia requires a notary for all the documents that they require, and they require a lesser amount of documents, which is also why the process is quicker. But that's basically depends on how quickly you're able to gather them on your side. And once the case is ready, we'll submit it to the island for due diligence. And this is when the due diligence fee needs to be paid. And the amount of due diligence depends on the jurisdiction, but it's typically between $10,000 to $40,000. And even though islands usually promise no more than 3 to 4 months of the due diligence process, in our experience, we typically see them delaying the process. Sometimes they justify it by they're just requesting additional documents, and sometimes they just don't justify it at all. But we're in constant communication with them. We know what's going on, so that they're not delaying your application too long. And then once the due diligence is completed, you will receive a letter of pre-approval stating that your application is all good, everything came back clear. And then at this point, this is when you actually make either the donation or you purchase the real estate. And at Plan B Passport, we have a 100% approval rate. And we do this based on conducting our own due diligence, making sure that the case is 100% completed. And we also work with a very specific audience, such as Bitcoiners, and we already know where potential issues could appear. And because of this, due to the specifics of the industry, we understand some bottlenecks that they might encounter, and we understand how to mitigate those. And once the pre-approval is received, you'll also get an invoice, as I said, for a donation of real estate. And this is when you'll close the deal for real estate. And then once you input that, then 3 to 4 weeks later, you'll receive your passport in the mail. Sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? I think so. But now, to make sure you understand what the paperwork process looks like, we'll go through a specific example of preparing the documents for a family of 3 for St. Kitts. So for example, for the Park Hyatt, where you have the husband as the main applicant, you have his spouse. Oh my goodness, sorry. You have, yes, husband as main applicant, spouse, and then also a 6-year-old child. So for example, typically or always, the main applicant has to submit the most amount of documents. So for example, you'll have to put together your birth certificate, if you have a national ID, passport, if you have any other citizenships or any residency permits elsewhere, if you had a military record, did you ever change your name, criminal background check, your highest level of education, so your diploma, high school, MBA, whatever. If for the child, you'll have to get a letter from their school, and we have templates for documents that you will, if you don't know, for example, how to put it together, we have templates for you. You'll have to get a medical health form filled out, and we'll fill that out for you on our side, and you just basically take it to a medical doctor and then fill it out for you, and then you send it back to us. You'll have to get an HIV/AIDS test, driver's license. You'll have to take new full face photos for your passport. If you have a marriage certificate, if you have a divorce certificate, pension certificate, you'll have to gather a utility bill, bank reference letters, bank statements for 12 months, professional reference letters, and then proof of source of funds.
After all that, it doesn't sound that easy. But no,
the hardest part.
Yeah, Jessica just mentioned all of the documents that can potentially be prepared. Again, we'll customize the checklist for you. It will be probably much less than what we just went through.
That's like the most, if you're like, say, the most complicated case,
Yeah.
You just have a lot of documents together. But typically, especially for single applicants, you won't have this many documents to gather. And typically the biggest one is proof of source of funds. So Katie, how would you typically go about proving source of funds?
Yeah, this is where like one of the big details of our audience kicks in. Basically, there are like Bitcoiners, many Bitcoiners acquired their wealth through the number go up technology, right? And this is not something that those islands and citizenship by investment units can understand. Therefore, they are really used to things like show us tax declarations showing that you obtain a big sum of money by selling real estate, by having your employments being pretty profitable, or like your businesses, etc. So this is where we step in, and we started working with things like providing legal affidavit on your Bitcoin gains, or working with some new kind of applications helping you do proof of funds on Bitcoin or on your hardware wallet and things like that. So that's a very specific one, and that's something we discuss with each particular client at the very beginning. We put a strategy on that and understand how we're going to proceed there.
Yeah, and this is exactly why we go through an onboarding call or an email just to really get down into your particular situation, as every case is different. And basically you'll have to gather the similar amount of documents for your spouse, and then for your child there's less, but the most amount is typically for the main applicant. But I also wanted to go over the timeline of the payments. So I'm going to stick with the St. Kitts real estate example. So your first invoice would be for Plan B passport. So you'd submit an invoice for $10,000. And then you would go ahead and put down 10% for the shares. So you would send $20,000. And then you would pay their due diligence fee once we submit the application, and that's around $11,500. And then once you receive your letter of pre-approval, around 4 to 5 months later, this is when you actually purchase the real estate. And so you'll have to purchase $200,000 worth of shares. And then you'll also pay the second invoice for Plan B, which is the second half, so $10,000. And then 2 to 3 weeks later, you'll get your passport in the mail.
Which I really like that moment when client gets his passport and like texting us was, words of appreciation for what we've done.
It's really an exciting time.
Yeah, very specific, very special moment.
Yeah, we need to start getting them to take pictures,
Yeah,
like either
sure.
at an airport or like at a beach.
And we're trying to like provide as much privacy as we can to our clients. So like we can't even ask for, give us a comment about how you feel about it with your name.
Yeah,
like, we're not gonna do that ever.
No.
So the best we can ask is like, can you take a
your
picture
hand.
of your hand?
Just your hand.
Passport? Yeah.
But that's basically the process, the paperwork that's involved. It's pretty seamless. We've gotten it to a point where, we know what the islands need, and we know how to properly process your application. And then basically just your next steps, things you could do for now. You already know the process and how it works. So the reasonable next step would be to, if you want, we can send you your calculations for you personally. You could do your own research, or you can schedule a call with us personally so we can go through your specific situation to determine which jurisdiction is right for you.
Yep. And we do have a couple of questions, so let's just go ahead and answer those. Okay. So from anonymous attendee, the question is, Portugal is pretty easy to maintain golden visa and skirt any tax changes regardless of what they are. So with Portugal, I do like the golden visa program for sure. We still work with that, but you can already see that they started stricten their, the open areas for real estate purchase. So January 1st, 2022, they changed the layout of where you can purchase real estate in order to qualify for golden visa.
Yeah. For example, Lisbon isn't available anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been, we already see those changes, and it sounds like, from one hand, those changes are brought to us by just like they don't want real estate market in Lisbon to inflate like hell while other areas don't work. So they kind of trying to direct the capital into less developed, as they call low
income development. No, low density
areas. Yes. So that makes sense, but also we do know that they do have pressure from the rest of the EU, and they don't like that a lot of EU residents who have easy access to Portugal moving into a better tax regime, which is like this is what you get. This is what people do. They move to a better place.
That's what happens when another place offers better incentives.
Almost like the free market exists.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Golden Visa is a pretty cool program. With Malta though, I'm not a big fan of Maltese program. They have a lot of denials for absolutely no reason. Like they may not like your Facebook friend list and deny your application based on that. So I no longer even work with Malta. Okay, next question. I'm not gonna say names out loud because we do have recording. We might post it on Facebook later. So another attendee question is, what do you think about relatively quick naturalization period in Latin American countries? The benefits of these passports that they don't carry the same risk as others, that they will be weakened because they are used as refugee by people considered bad in stupid countries. I love how you stated this question. So I'm personally pretty bullish on Latin America. First of all, they're pretty based because they didn't have it too good for too long.
Yeah.
So they know how to survive. They have this strong mentality. They have pretty good land and pretty good family values. So I am bullish on those. And that, like, one of the examples that we see with El Salvador is they were on a US dollar standard. They don't have access to the money printer, while they do get basically they're at the bottom of the quintillion effect, just like we all are, while being a nation state, like government at the bottom of quintillion effect. They don't like that.
Yeah.
So they started looking into Bitcoin, and they do look into citizenship by investment program just because they have to, right? That this is the survival mechanism. And that's what I want to see, more Latin American countries who do not play the geopolitical game necessarily with the US or European Union or other like Five Eye countries, just start popping up with their citizenship by investment program. Now, you mentioned relatively quick naturalization process. Relatively quick, I see, is 5 years, 4 or 5 years in most scenarios. Brazil, though, has a little quicker turnout. But basically, with Mexico, 4 or 5 years, you can apply for citizenship after being a resident for that amount of time. And in most Latin American countries, that's the case. I would prefer to see just straight path to citizenship. Like, that's way more attractive to me.
Plus, I think it was pretty interesting to see how Mexico turned out to be one of the
most
country
in the world. Yeah.
During the past 2 years, like now you don't have to submit any documentation to get in. You just go. It's amazing.
For U.S. citizen single applicant, what if any concerns, downsides are with the St. Lucia passport donation option? For payments done Plan B or St. Lucia accept crypto, Bitcoin, and stablecoin, etc. So for accepting Bitcoin and stablecoins, it's case by case scenario depending on how you decide to proceed with jurisdiction, and we should have mentioned it in the webinar because that's our specialty. Like, we accept Bitcoin, and we try to find all the jurisdictions that do accept Bitcoin and USDC, USDT. So it is possible, let's say that. And any downsides for single applicant, like, this is the most popular program for US citizens, single applicants, to go with St. Lucia donation. Are there any downsides? If you weren't from the US, let's say you were coming from a less powerful passport country, such as Russia, then I would probably recommend you to proceed with St. Kitts or Antigua. Or if you wanted a specific access to specific countries that St. Lucia doesn't provide you visa-free access to, such as, let's say, China, right? You want a visa-free access to China, I would recommend you to go with other jurisdiction. But if you're solely looking for a legit Plan B passport for safety and security, for your, bug out jurisdiction, I think St. Lucia is very good jurisdiction. Pretty streamlined process for obtaining the passport, a little simpler, a little easier paperwork process than others. So I think it's pretty good jurisdiction. Anonymous attendee, do you plan offering an option for El Salvador? I read Latin and Spanish can apply for citizenship after 1 year. Can be an interesting option for people from those countries. So with El Salvador, they've been promising a lot, right? And we all got pretty pumped about the legal tender and everything, but there's still government, and it takes years to implement changes. Like, the next day after they got the legal tender, I called the local immigration and started talking about, hey, he said this, he said that, this is going to happen. And she had no idea what I was talking about. She doesn't know what legal tender is or what Bitcoin is. And it's like, it takes time to implement that. So you guys probably seen on our YouTube channel, we had an open letter to President Bukele, where we basically did a big research on what Bitcoiners want from El Salvador Citizenship by Investment Program. And like, we know, like, we have this specific knowledge from their audience, and we know how to implement this program. So we were able to get in touch with local government and provide them with some of the really valuable data that I hope they will use while implementing the Citizenship by Investment Program. And those were things like how Bitcoiners want to pay, what they would be interested in, like bonds, donation versus real estate, what kind of price they would be down for, how they want the process to be like, what the paperwork process should be, as well as, you know, we found out about things like everybody in El Salvador gotta go to military, and we're like, those
Not
citizenship by investment
exempt.
people not gonna do that. Yeah. So
We basically lined it up for them.
yeah, I think like they should just reach out and, you know, ask more. But we did have a couple of calls with local authorities to help them outline that. Now we just wait and see what's going to happen with that. Well, that's about all the questions we've got. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat. But I think, geez, technology. Yeah, sometimes there are like friendship countries that will allow to obtain citizenship easier for a child. So for example, in the EU, if you're a resident of EU, you can move around the EU freely and establish residency elsewhere. So same happens in some Latin American countries. They're more inclined to give you citizenship faster if you're from a friend country. So that's pretty interesting too. But yeah, as you know, our second Bible at Plan B Passport is Sovereign Individual. Specifically, chapter 5 is where we talk about how nation states are gonna start losing their power, and we will see smaller states or smaller entities evolve through a free competition of, you know, providing a better price at better value, better services.
Who knew they'd actually have to work for us?
Yep. And that's what we're here for. We really hope to help this process accelerate, and we'll be happy to help you go down this rabbit hole, brainstorm together on what works for you, and actually execute for you. Again, really appreciate you guys joining this webinar.
Thank you so much.
Please give us feedback. We'll be happy to hear how you felt about this webinar, what you found interesting. If you have any questions, thank you guys.
Thanks so much. Bye, y'all.